10. The Mug Barge. Famously known as the Mug Barge, the Friendship 500 is a 187-foot, 57-meter barge that was converted into a floating McDonald's for the 1986 World Exposition on Transportation and Communication in Vancouver, British Columbia. Unlike other McDonald's restaurants, the Mug Barge kept its kitchen hidden, delivering orders to the front counter with a conveyor belt and adding a futuristic touch to the already popular fast food joint. But the restaurant's glory days were short-lived. When the expo ended, the Mug Barge closed its doors permanently. The abandoned boat failed to find a permanent home or use. The situation only worsened in 1991 when the new owner of the marina where it was docked asked the Mug Barge's owners to move it. They moved the vessel to a nearby inlet where it sat, forgotten, for the next decade. In 2010, developers Howard and Kathy Meekin bought the barge with plans to turn it into a deep-sea ocean dedicated to the history of the Pacific Ocean. But the project seems to be slow going, leading many to wonder if the couple still has any plans for the boat. Nobody has updated the Mug Barge's official Twitter account since 2017, and as of 2019, the Meekins' vision of converting it into a museum had yet to come to fruition. For now, its future remains unclear. 9. Damon Silos. During the 20th century, Chicago was home to the world's largest grain storage center. Built in 1906, the facility was known as the Damon Silos. It was owned by the Topeka and Santa Fe Railroad and consisted of a network of interlocking 15-story silos with enough room to store 400,000 bushels of grain. In 1977, a massive explosion damaged the silos beyond repair and the site closed for good. Since then, they've become an attraction for urban explorers, graffiti artists, and troublesome deviants. According to photographer Mike Kinch, who snapped eerie images of the property, the basement contains thousands of square feet of dark rooms and tunnels. Speaking with the news outlet Block Club Chicago, he explained that the tunnels run beneath half the 24-acre, 10-hectare site and that someone could easily get lost in them. It's illegal to explore this seemingly post-apocalyptic landmark, but plenty of people are curious enough to take their chances on getting caught. Those who are determined enough to explore the Damon Silos can find instructions on how to access the site if they look hard enough. 8. Halodovo Palace Hotel. The Croatian island of Krk is home to a crumbling abandoned hotel that could perhaps best be described as resembling a decaying vintage sci-fi movie set. Built in 1971, the Halodovo Palace Hotel was once a luxury destination for vacationers in what was then Yugoslavia. Certain aspects of the crumbling structure, including its monolithic qualities, resembled typical communist architecture of the time. Shortly after the hotel opened, Penthouse magazine founder Bob Guccione became an unlikely diplomat of sorts. He invested $45 million in the property and expanded it to include a penthouse casino in hopes of encouraging better relations between the US and Yugoslavia. Of course, there was something in it for him. Generous laws that allowed casino owners to withdraw money from the country tax-free. The ritzy resort attracted foreign tourists of high-ranking social status, including athletes, actors, and world leaders. But these glory days came to an abrupt end when war broke out in Yugoslavia in 1990 and drove away the high-end clientele that the Halodovo Palace Hotel depended on to stay afloat. The business closed and became a shelter for refugees. It then sat abandoned for years before Croatia gained its independence. By then, it was decrepit, but several owners nevertheless attempted to revive it. The final guest stayed there in 2001. In addition to being an eyesore, the site is a safety hazard. Skylights and windows are broken, the elevators are in disrepair, and the pool is empty and missing tiles. Concrete is crumbling, metal fixtures are rusted and sharp, and chunks of broken glass are subject to fall onto someone at any given moment. Will the Halodovo Palace Hotel ever bounce back? Probably not. It's an utter disaster, and not to mention its fixtures and style are completely outdated and bizarre according to modern tastes. Most investors see the cost of fixing the place up as far more than it's worth. 7. Chicken Church. Sometime during the 1990s, a man named Daniel Alamscha dreamed about building a prayer house and took it as a sign that God wanted him to build a church. He was a devout Christian, but pictured his prayer house as a place that welcomed people of all faiths. He wanted the building to be in the shape of a dove, and to sit on a hilltop near his home in central Java, Indonesia. Alamsyah bought an acre of land, obtained permission to build, and got to work. His creation ended up looking more like a hen than a dove, but he went ahead and opened it to the public anyway. It soon became known as the Gereja Ayam, or the Chicken Church. Services for various religions were held on the upper floors, while the lower levels housed a drug rehabilitation center and a care facility for disabled children. At one point, the site also functioned as a mental asylum. But Alamsyah wasn't paying the bills, and he eventually went broke. To make matters worse, not everyone in the community shared his humanitarian vision for the place, and they didn't hesitate to complicate things for him by publicly voicing their opposition to it. Alamsyah closed and abandoned the Chicken Church in 2000. Since then, time and nature have immersed the structure into a state of decay. Ironically, however, it's become even more popular since it was deserted. Photos and stories of the church have circulated widely across the internet, drawing curious visitors from all over the world. People have even got married and had their wedding photos taken there. Visitors have helped to make the Chicken Church look a little less decrepit by covering the walls with vibrant murals and opening a cafe inside. 6. Deserted English Mansion. While driving on the outskirts of North London in 2020, urban explorer Colin Smith spotted a mysterious mansion at the end of a long, overgrown driveway. Curious to see what was inside, he returned a few days later to scope it out. When he spoke with reporters, Smith described the property as quite creepy and dark because of how big it was. He learned that the 8-bedroom mansion was built during the 1930s and that it had a servants' quarters and a bell system for communicating with staff. Inside the spooky mansion, the explorer found furniture, a grand piano, old wine bottles, a pair of eyeglasses, painted portraits, silver eating utensils, books, black and white photographs, and newspapers dating back as far as 1954. YouTube footage that Smith captured also shows dining ware, cleaning supplies, a fridge filled with moldy food, and a clock on the wall with the hands stopped at a few minutes past 6:30. It was as if an entire family had just up and left one day on a moment's notice, leaving their entire lives behind. Based on these sell-by dates on old cans of food in the kitchen, Smith determined that the house was likely abandoned around 30 years earlier. Nobody knows why the property owners deserted their lavish home and didn't take their belongings. Their seemingly sudden departure left the house looking like an eerie time capsule, filled with the scattered remnants of a forgotten period in their lives. Smith told the media that he thinks the mansion may have been sold to a property tycoon who didn't have the time to renovate it and simply allowed it to fall into ruin. Would you be brave enough to enter a creepy old mansion like this? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. 5. Dessau Cemetery and Crematorium. In the German town of Dessau, there's a road that runs through an old and mostly abandoned cemetery. Known simply as Cemetery 3, it's filled with broken and fallen tombstones and urns. While some of the statues are rather beautiful, others feature disturbing inscriptions. There are monuments dedicated to soldiers who died in both World Wars, along with a memorial to 56 workers who perished in a factory explosion in 1918. The cemetery's most perplexing feature is a domed building that resembles a chapel from the outside. Inside the deceptively quaint structure are the remnants of an old crematorium, where an estimated 100,000 bodies were burned between 1910 and the late 80s. It got so busy at one point that a new wing was added onto the building to accommodate the influx of human remains. The buildings are still filled with paperwork, old telephones, and the equipment that was used for burning human remains. Visitors have likened entering the crematorium to stepping into a horror film. 4. Huutuwan. Huutuwan is an abandoned fishing settlement located on China's Shengshan Island, roughly 40 miles, 64.4 kilometers from Shanghai. Nearly every building there is overrun with vegetation, possibly making it the greenest village on Earth. Until the early 1990s, nearly 2,000 fishermen and their families inhabited Huutuwan. But the small fishing community lacked the ability to meet the industry's growing demand, and residents fled to the mainland and elsewhere for other professions and, presumably, a better life. Today, only a handful of residents remain, with nearly all of Huutuwan's homes sitting empty and abandoned. After people left, nature took back over, hence the settlement's reputation for being green. Inside the homes, visitors can catch a glimpse of life exactly as the residents left it, with even the furniture remaining in place for decades and counting. Ironically, Huutuwan has become a tourist destination due precisely to its abandoned nature, leaving a bittersweet mark on the area for those who once considered it their home, and the few who still do. At the very least, tourism dollars are welcomed in the dwindling community. 3. Goussainville-Vaupés. The Parisian suburb of Goussainville-Vaupés was once considered an attractive place to live. It was home to 144 families. It retained a quaint, old-town charm, but was close to the city. There were shops, cafes, a church, and even a weekend farmers market that drew customers from outside the village. Things started going downhill in 1973, when a prototype for a Soviet supersonic jet crashed into the town during the Paris Air Show. The accident destroyed 15 houses and a school, and killed 8 residents, as well as the plane's crew. A year later, Charles de Gaulle International Airport opened nearby. The airport's so close to Goussainville, the neighborhood is considered part of the runway approach. Low-flying planes passed over the town day and night, causing unbearable noise and rattling the historic brick homes. Almost all of Goussainville's residents moved within a year after the airport opened. Some people were so eager to get away, they didn't even bother to sell their homes first. The airport bought 100 of the vacant houses in exchange for agreeing to take care of them, but the contract was never enforced. There are a few residents left, but the village consists mostly of abandoned squares, overgrown yards, and decrepit, boarded-up graffiti-covered homes with broken windows. Some houses have been demolished, but many still stand despite their sad state. Because the village church is a protected property, nothing near it can be destroyed, sparing a good portion of the town from the wrecking ball. The church is one of Goussainville's only fixtures that's remained in good condition. As a historic monument, it's taken care of while everything around it rots. The commotion that once filled the town has been replaced with a chilling silence, punctuated by the deafening sound of commercial jets passing overhead. Some of the last holdouts who refused to leave Goussainville tried to revive it in recent years. The population has increased slightly, but the homes need millions of dollars worth of renovations. 2. Film City. In the Qatari desert, several hours outside the capital city of Doha, there's a deserted, ancient-looking Bedouin-style village known as Film City. The reason behind its existence is somewhat of a mystery, but it's widely believed that the site is an abandoned film set that was built for a movie or television series. Visitors are allowed to explore the property, which contains Islamic-style towers called minarets, a mosque, and mud brick houses with wooden doors. Writing for Afar, Adriana Paramo explained that Film City was formerly a fishing village and that it was abandoned during the 1970s. Then in 2009, it was partially rebuilt for film purposes, according to some, although the story varies and nobody seems to truly know what to believe. The fact that there's an abandoned village smack dab in the middle of the vast desert is creepy enough, but the lack of cars and humans, aside from other visitors and a security guard, only adds to the eeriness. And a 4-wheel drive is required just to get there, serving as a reminder of just how remote the location is. 1. Dachkov, situated on a cliff overlooking the Black Sea in the Russian city of Sochi, is a mysterious derelict mansion without a roof. It was built during the early 20th century by a wealthy Russian colonel named Andrei Valerionovich Kvitko and was meant to resemble an Italian mansion that his wife's wealthy family owned. The family only enjoyed the newly built home for about a year before the Russian Revolution started in 1917. Kvitko knew he was in trouble due to his Tsarist loyalties. He and his wife fled to Italy, and the state took possession of the mansion. It was converted to a home for troubled teens, and then became a vacation home. The building functioned as a hospital during World War II, then became a sanatorium. Renovation work began during the late 80s, but was left unfinished when the Soviet Union collapsed and ran out of money to fund these types of projects. The house has sat abandoned ever since, falling further and further into disrepair. There's been talk in recent years about fixing it up, but it hasn't happened yet. It's in really poor condition, and it would be very expensive to save from completely falling apart. The mansion is so damaged that explorers are urged to be extremely cautious and not to try going upstairs. Thanks for watching. Which one of these strange abandoned places would you like to see? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.